When Diana saw a kind child give up his seat for her, she noticed he only had one leg. This made her curious about his life story. What she found out touched her heart and inspired her to make a brave choice. Diana hesitated to board the crowded bus because the next one was 20 minutes away. Her 80-year-old knees couldn't handle standing for long, but she hoped someone might offer her a seat. As she entered the bus, Diana was disappointed. She had been looking forward to the monthly fare, her only chance to see people. Instead, she felt overwhelmed by the crowd. She clutched her purse, even though it didn't have much money. No one seemed to notice or smile at her. They were all engrossed in their phones as she searched for an empty seat. Look at all these zombies, Diana thought. How can I expect any kindness in today's world? They're all just, "Ma'am, you can have my seat." Diana's mental rant was interrupted by the lively voice of a young boy. Diana looked at the boy, smiling at her with a warmth she barely recognized in the world anymore. She was so pleased by the boy's compassion that she didn't notice him struggling to get up from the seat. Onlookers stared as they saw the boy lift himself onto a crutch and step into the aisle. A child from the back yelled, "Mom, Dad, look at that boy's foot." That's when Diana saw it and felt her heart melt. The boy who had chosen to show her kindness only had one leg. "Oh, I didn't realize, child." Diana patted the child on the head. "Please sit down. I'll be." "No, ma'am, I'm perfectly all right. You need to give those feet a rest. Please, I insist." Diana was moved by the boy's unpretentious kindness. She wanted to politely refuse again, but the boy was already waiting to see her settle in the seat. "All right, but only if you agree to tell me everything about you, young man." It was a long ride to the fair, but for Diana, it was emotional as she heard bits and pieces of the boy's life story. "My name is Ethan. I live with my mother and grandmother in Springville. You look a lot like my grandma Sue, but she's been bedridden for the past 3 years. She used to read me stories and sing me songs all the time. But Mom says Grandma has lost her voice forever, so now I read and sing to her instead. And then she smiles just like you," Ethan shared. "And what does your mom do?" Diana asked. "Everything, really. Mom works as a waitress during the day, then comes home for lunch and rushes to the mall, where she works at another cafe. She's also learning to be a hairstylist. Whenever she's got time in between, she caters for birthday parties and other events in the neighborhood. Ever since Dad died, she's never stopped worrying. And I'm number 1 on the list. I try to help her with household chores and groceries, but she'll always stop me from taking on her work. She won't even let me tutor on the weekends to help her out financially. Like today, when I had some time on my hands, I offered to help with prepping for a birthday party this evening. But Mom stuffed a few dollars into my hand and booted me out of the house, telling me to go have a childhood instead." Ethan and Diana chuckled, but Diana was secretly lost in thought, imagining the hardships of his mother's life. "Your mom sounds like a fierce woman," Diana smiled. "She reminds me of my younger self. You better listen to her because there's no winning. My dad would tell me the same thing, and he was the strongest man I ever knew. He loved her so much." For the first time in the conversation, Ethan choked up. Diana held his arm gently to calm him, sensing that there was a grave tragedy behind the boy's pain. "It's all right, Ethan. You don't have to talk about it now. Come on, our stop is almost here." Diana and Ethan helped each other get down and walked to the fair. They visited different stalls, looked around with amusement as people bought overpriced trinkets, and finally got themselves some ice cream. After 2 hours of roaming around, the duo was exhausted as they took the bus ride back home. Sitting next to Ethan, Diana couldn't stop thinking about his kind gesture and life story. Something about this child's story felt personal, and Diana wasn't ready to just leave it as a chance meeting. "Ethan, can you give your mother a call?" Diana asked. "Tell her an old woman you met on the bus has invited you to her home for tea and a slice of pie." Ethan was famished and smiled at the thought of warm pie. He told his mom about meeting Diana, and his mother happily gave him permission. That evening, Diana made her trademark blueberry pie for the first time in months, and in the conversation that ensued, Ethan spoke openly about his father for the first time in months. "He was my hero. He was my catch partner. He was the guy who made the most boring subjects in school interesting to study, and I was embarrassed by it at the time, but he was my greatest cheerleader." Diana held the boy's hand as he opened up. "Dad and I were driving home from my basketball match. I still remember how angry and disappointed I was because my team had lost. It was a minor match, it meant nothing. But at that moment, I didn't know I was wasting my last conversation with my dad by throwing tantrums. I didn't think we were minutes away from a car crash that would claim my leg and kill my hero. Instead, I was busy being mad at him. 'You should have bought me those new shoes, Dad. I really needed them today,' I told him." Ethan still remembered how calmly his dad responded to his immature hissy fit. "Son, the blessing wasn't in having those shoes. The blessing is having 2 feet, a focused mind, and the ability to practice until you get better. Diana was speechless at the powerful words of the man she never had the chance to meet. My dad, Ethan continued, was a therapist and trainer for Paralympic sports people. He lived to rebuild the spirits of sportsmen who had lost hope because of some accident or event that rendered them disabled. Ethan struggled to hold back his tears. Do you wish he was here to talk you through your challenges? Ethan was astonished that Diana knew exactly what he was feeling. He let his guard down for the first time since his father's funeral and cried. I remember what he once told a one-legged sportsman who had come home in the middle of the night. The man had lost his leg in an accident and wanted to quit everything and disappear. My dad was the one looking after him during his recovery. He said, "My man, focus on what you have. Always. You have 2 hands, 2 eyes, a brilliant mind, the desire to be the greatest at your sport, a family who stands by you. Don't think for a second that any of those things are less important than a leg." Those words always stay with me. I try to live by them. I hope I'm doing justice to them. Diana tried to hide her tears as she consoled the young boy. In the week that followed, Diana kept thinking about Ethan. It made her want to talk to her own son, who hadn't visited her in a year. She tried to call him repeatedly, but it didn't surprise her when the calls went unanswered. That's when she decided to follow what her heart was telling her to do. The following Sunday, Ethan got back home from his weekly trip to the grocery store. His mother was busy preparing lunch and his grandma was trying to read the newspaper in bed. That's when Ethan heard a knock on the door. "Mrs. Dale?" It was the same old woman he had given up his seat for on the bus ride to the fair. Diana waved and smiled at Ethan, noticing his mother approaching the door. "Hello, Ethan," and "Hello, you must be Ethan's mom." Diana shook hands with them. "I just decided to show up and surprise you today." "I was hoping to share some news," Diana said, looking at the mother and son's curious faces. "You don't know this, but I am the owner of the biggest chain of malls in the city. I didn't come from a family of wealth, and so when I heard about you, Ethan's mom, I was reminded of a younger me. I was about your age when I lost the love of my life too. And at that moment, while I was struggling to hold my life together and create a life of comfort for my little boy, I wished there was some miraculous helping hand that would lift us from years and years of struggle. Now my son has his own luxurious life, and if he isn't bothering to reach out to me, he must be doing well for himself." Ethan's mother was saddened by the disappointment in the elderly woman's eyes. "I wasn't sure if people still understood kindness and family values, but meeting your son changed my mind. I want to help you and your family by letting you move into my big house so you can have a better life. I'll take care of your needs and hope for love and belonging in return." Ethan's mom eventually agreed, and Diana provided Ethan with modern prosthetics. They all became a close-knit family, including Ethan's grandmother. Even when Diana's son returned only for her money, she called the police on him to protect her newfound family. Ethan had a happy home with 2 grandmothers, and when Diana left, she gave him her $1.7 million house as a parting gift.